So hi, everyone. My name is Julia Madison, and I'm going to be the technical manager for this session on the Global Diet Quality Score. And this is chaired by the team at the Intake Center for Dietary Assessment. So thank you all so much for taking part in ANH 2022. We're looking forward to a really robust and interactive session today. And this is our second day here at the Learning Labs at ANH Academy. So a quick reminder that everything you need to access the conference materials and programs can be found on the ANH Academy website at anhacademy.org/ANH2022. So before the folks at Intake begin to take the conversation forward, I have a few technical announcements just to make sure our experience is as smooth and interactive as possible. So first, this session will be recorded and posted on the ANH Academy website following the conference. Second, all participants have been muted, but please take a moment to introduce yourselves using the chat function. Let us know your name, where you're joining us from, and the organization that you work with. We encourage you to share your webcam throughout the session, but if your connection is bad, we recommend you turn your video off. And lastly, if you experience any technical issues, please check your audio and internet connections, and you can always reconnect to the session using the same Zoom link you used to join now. So if you have any technical questions, please send me a private message using the chat box to Julia Madison at ANH Academy. So thank you again all so much for joining, and I'm going to pass it over to Joanne.
Okay, so thank you and welcome everybody to our session on the Global Diet Quality Score. So my name is Joanne Arsenal, and I'm showing you here our 5 facilitators, all from Intake Center for Dietary Assessment at FHI Solutions. And so throughout the session, we'll be kind of passing the baton along to each of us, kind of back and forth. We'll all be facilitating various aspects in the Learning Lab. So this slide shows our learning objectives. Just give you a few seconds just to glance at those. Just want to give a very brief overview of our session, just to let you know the lay of the land here and the time allotted for each section. We'll be opening up with a brief icebreaker and a brief introduction to the Intake Center for Dietary Assessment. Then we'll have a presentation on the Gdqs metric, an overview of the metric, and followed by a short question and answer session. Then we're going to have breakout sessions that will have demos of the Gdqs app. We'll have a short break and come back to the main room for a discussion and Q&A. And then we'll end with future work and new directions for the Gdqs. Just a few logistics. So if you'd like, this is optional. You could we've already done in the chat, letting us know in the chat who you are and where you're from, but there's also an option for you to actually change your name in Zoom and put in, what institution you're from. So if you want to do that and you're not sure how to do it, you're essentially just right-click on your name in the participant list, and we have a little picture there to show you how to do it. So we are going to have breakout rooms in English, French, and Spanish. And so we ask if you could please, if you do want a French or Spanish breakout room, to please use the chat to send a message to the host to request either French or Spanish. You don't need to do this for English, just if French or Spanish. If you could please do that now, that would be really helpful so that we can make sure you get into the right group. And then we will have a couple of question and answer sessions at certain times. And for these, we'll ask you to send your questions via the chat to a specific host, and we'll let you know who that person is at that time. And you could also raise your hand. We won't have like an open chat throughout the whole session, but we'll handle the question and answer session that way, just with individually sending your questions to a person, a specific host, or you can raise your hand. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Morad, who's going to do the icebreaker.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this learning lab about our Gdqs app. We're very happy to have you here, and we hope that you will find it very useful. I'm going to lead you. I'm Murad Mursi, and I'm going to lead you through this icebreaker. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you a link in the chat in Zoom. When you click on that link, it's going to take you to your internet browser where you can answer 3 questions that I'll be asking you, okay? Now, after you answer those questions, I'm gonna do it one by one. After each time you answer the question on the browser, please come back to Zoom and the shared screen, the screen I'll be sharing on Zoom so that you can see, the answers of your friends and colleagues in the session, okay? So I'm going to be sending you the link right now. It's a poll everywhere link, so pollev.com. There we go. So the first question we have for you here is, where in the world are you now? So please go on the link, click on where you are, and then come back to see the results. Okay, so so we have people from all over the world. Okay, so we have people from Asia, from Africa, a bunch of people in the UK and Europe, and also North America and South America. Yes, so, oops, there's somebody seems to be like in the North Pole or something. Anyway, you can clear your response and then submit the response again. Oh, I see a lot of people from South and East Asia, from Australia, from Africa. Perfect. So we have a very fair representation across the world here, which I'm very happy about. A little bit, less representation from South America, but other than that, we have a lot of people everywhere. Great. Okay. So I'm going to move to the next question. And the next question is, what sectors do you work in? So you can choose more than one sector, choose more than one response, but please let us know, okay? So we have very strong representation from nutrition as expected, with people working in agriculture, also in health. I see also environmental science, welcome. Technology, IT, economics, and then other sectors. That's a fantastic representation. Yes, I'm very happy to see, especially people from the environmental science, since we have something to talk about that, towards the end of the session. So stay with us and you'll hear a little bit more about the work we're doing in that area towards the end of the session. Yeah, so, okay, so I'll give it maybe 15 more seconds and then we'll move to the next question. So for those of you who are in the other category, if you want, you can basically type in the chat which sector that is, so we can get a better sense of it. But yeah, so we see here very strong representation of nutrition. Okay, so I'm going to move to the last question. And the last question is, what words come to mind when you think about using a technology-assisted mobile application for dietary data collection? Now, you can submit one word at a time as your response, but then you can respond again and again and again with many words, okay? So, but give it one word at a time and you can respond as many times as you like. Okay, so I'm seeing here the words that are coming up: helpful, efficient, convenience. Oh, faster is coming up very strongly here. Fast and easy. Yeah, so it seems that people are really thinking about, the mobile technology as something that's fast and easy, but also that I see convenient, I see efficient, I see standardized, I see also challenging, and I see also comments related to the fact that it could be complicated, but it looks like, like fast, easy, efficient, and convenient, and friendly. I'm hoping by friendly it means user-friendly are coming up very strongly. So it's good. So I'm very happy to hear that. I'm very happy to think that, you're the kind of crowd that is not afraid of using technology for their work. I'm guessing you have a lot of practice with it already, and that's a very good thing. Okay, so Yeah. Okay, so please find your way back to Zoom now to see the word map that came out of your responses. Again, as we saw, you see here, friendly, easy, and convenient and efficient are the ones that dominate the responses. So please find your way back to the Zoom session. And then what I'm going to do in a few seconds is I'm going to pass the baton to our director, Megan Deichler, who will be sharing a quick overview of intake.
Thank you very much. That was great, Murad. Hello, everyone. It's really such a pleasure to see you all. Thank you for attending this session. I hope that you'll find it very useful. I'm just going to give a quick overview of intake. I just have one slide, but the point is I want to give you a sense of how this work that you'll hear about today fits in the context of the broader work we do at Intake. So Intake is a Center for Dietary Assessment. We're based at FHI Solutions in Washington, D.C. And we were established in 2016 with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we were really established on the principle or the idea that dietary data is crucial for informing evidence-based actions across multiple sectors. Not just nutrition, but agriculture, the environment, health. And so really what we do at Intake is we try to help reduce barriers to dietary data collection, analysis, and use. And so this has included various work streams that we undertake, from providing technical support to those who are collecting large-scale dietary data, to really taking forward the development of tools and technology and metrics to help more easily collect dietary data and reduce those barriers to the collection, analysis, and use. And so you're going to hear about today the Global Diet Quality Score, which is a metric of diet quality that we, in collaboration with Harvard University and the National Institute of Public Health in Mexico, developed and validated for global use. And you're also going to be hearing about the app that we've developed for data collection. So with that, I am going to pass it on to Marieke, who is going to give you an overview about the metric, and then later we'll move into the app. But I just want to say before we kind of dig into the core of the session today, that at Intake, we really welcome your feedback, we welcome your comments, and we would love to hear from you. And at the end of this learning lab, Joanne will be putting up a slide with our contact information. And I just encourage you to reach out if you have questions about today's session. If you want to learn more, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Hello, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. I've been looking at your text messages with introduction, and it's very exciting to have so many participants. So during the next 10 minutes, I will be providing an overview of the Global Diet Quality Score, or Gdqs metric for short. So this overview ties in with the first two objectives of the Learning Lab, which are to understand the appropriate use of the Gdqs as a metric for diet quality, and also to understand how the Gdqs metric may apply to your work. At the end of this overview, you will have an opportunity to ask questions before we move on to the demonstration of the Gdqs app in breakout rooms. Next, please. So although malnutrition in all its forms affects 1 in 3 people, we know surprisingly little about diets, especially of people in low and middle income countries. So we need more and better data on what people eat so that we can design evidence-based food and nutrition policies and programs that promote health, economic development, and also the environment. Yet, we lack a globally appropriate metric to measure diet quality. And when we refer to diet quality, we mean multiple dimensions of diet. These include nutrient adequacy, but also diet-related NCDs. So we are referring to more than diet diversity. To be able to collect dietary data globally and on a regular basis, we need a robust and universal applicable tool to measure diet quality. a tool that provides us with comparable and standardized dietary data. Next, please. So the Global Diet Quality Score was developed to respond to an absence of a robust, universal applicable method for measuring diet quality. It is part of a new generation of diet quality metrics. In this slide, I describe key features of the GDQS. So first of all, the GDQS was designed to be simple to use. It is entirely food-based, which means that the use of a food composition table is avoided. And it can be used globally. In fact, it is the first diet quality metric that was validated for global use using data sets from high, middle, and low-income countries against health outcomes. It was validated for women 15 to 49 years. There are other diet metrics that are simple, food-based, and designed for global use. But the next two features are what we feel makes this metric special. So first, the GDQS was designed to reflect overall diet quality. So while other metrics exist that reflect micronutrient adequacy or dietary risk factors associated with NCDs, the GDQS incorporates both dimensions in its design and scoring. So in other words, both foods that are healthy and foods that are unhealthy contribute to the overall GDQS score. The second unique feature is that the GDQS scoring method includes categorical information about quantities of healthy and unhealthy food groups consumed. And this is critical to obtain better understanding of the diet. So as I mentioned before, the GDQS is an entirely food-based metric. It consists of 25 food groups. And relative to other diet metrics, it has an expanded list of food groups. For example, the MDDW consists of 10 food groups. So as shown in green, it includes 60 healthy food groups, such as deep orange fruits, dark green leafy vegetable, legumes, nuts and seeds, and some animal-based food groups as well. As shown in yellowy mustard in the bottom, it also includes 7 unhealthy food groups, such as processed meat, refined grade, sweets, and purchased deep-fried foods. And then there are 2 food groups that we treat differently. These are high-fat dairy and red meat. And these are considered healthy when eaten in moderation, but unhealthy when eaten in excessive amounts. So I will briefly describe how the GDQS is tabulated. Points are assigned depending on the level of consumption of each food group. So for the 16 healthy food groups, points are given for higher intake. The more you eat, the higher the score. For the 7 unhealthy food groups, points are given for lower intake. And then for red meat and high fat, the food groups in blue in the previous slide, points are given for moderate consumption. The overall GDQS score is a sum of all the points across the 25 food groups, and scores range from 0 to 49. So let me talk you through 2 examples of how points are assigned. For each food group, points are given by level of consumptions, which are categorized as low, middle, or high. And the gram cutoff for these levels of consumptions vary by group. So the first row, for healthy food groups such as other fruits, 2 points are given for high consumption, which corresponds to more than 107 grams. This is shown in sort of the 3rd row to the right. And for unhealthy food groups, such as processed meats, 2 points are given for low consumption, which corresponds to less than 9 grams. And this is shown in the last row towards the left. So what I've described so far is what we believe to be a robust and universally applicable tool to measure diet quality. But we're well aware that this metric, having this metric, is only useful if it's easy to use. So making the use of the GDQS metric practical has been a top priority within our group at Intake. And we're pleased, actually more than pleased, to say that we have developed an app for data collection. The GDQ app was designed for global use. It was designed to be simple and easy to use. And this ties in with Murad's Icebreaker, I think top words that you mentioned were easy, fast, convenient. So that is what we had in mind during the development. Data collection takes 10 to 20 minutes. The use of the app by enumerators does not require intensive training or nutrition knowledge. It can be integrated or added into existing larger surveys. And Intake provides technical support, and the app can be downloaded for free. So the GDQS app innovates in traditional methods in several ways. So first, and we feel this is a great benefit, the GDQS app uses an open recall in which all foods and beverages consumed the previous day are captured. So for those of you who are familiar with the conventional 24-hour dietary recall using the multi-pass method, this corresponds to the first pass, or what we call the quick pass. So this means that when the app is used, we have data on all foods consumed. Another key feature is that the GDQS app has a built-in global database of more than 4,500 items, which enables the app to automatically classify each food reported into the corresponding food groups. So this really takes the burden away from assigning foods into the correct food group of the enumerator or perhaps the researcher, and allows comparability across different contexts. Then also, when using the GDQ app, 3D cubes of specified size allow the respondent to estimate the amount consumed for each food group. So when using the GDQS app, the GDQS app will list all the foods respondent reported that belong to a given food group, for example, tomatoes, cucumber, and aubergines. And the respondent is asked to imagine all these foods together and indicate which cube comes closest to the total amount consumed. So remember that for each food group, we just need to know if consumption was low, medium, or high. Finally, when the GDQ app is used, there is no need for data entry and processing. So I think this is part of what you meant when you were saying it was convenient and efficient. And in fact, the GDQS app can automatically give a GDQS score at the end of the interview. And this obviously saves time and money. So let me briefly describe how the GDQS data can be used. So it can be used for population level assessment of diet quality, tracking of population level change to diets across time, within and cross-country comparison of diet quality, assessment of change relative to targets, and tracking of change in response to programmatic and policy interventions. So let me give you two specific examples how the GDQS data collected with the app can be used. So first, since the GDQS app uses an open recall, we have detailed information on all foods consumed, which gives us flexibility on how these data are used. And because we can do this in a simple way, which with much less burden than a conventional 24-hour diet recall, we can collect these data at scale and regularly. Secondly, when collecting GDQS data, we have an improved understanding of food groups consumed by subpopulations, like, for example, consumption of whole grains or consumption of red meat. And since we estimate ranges of intake, we have detailed information, and these data allow for targeted interventions and policies through taxes, subsidies, food transfers, and others. So I thank you for your attention. We now open the floor for questions. My colleague, Winnie Bell, will be moderating this session. If you have questions, please send a message directly to Winnie Bell. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that really excellent and timely overview of the GDQS metric and app, Marike. So now we have about exactly 10 minutes for a question and answer session, specifically related to the metric. We're going to have more time after the GDQS app demo to answer, app-specific questions that come up during the demonstration. So I see there is, just navigating through here, a hand raised. Busi, let's start with your question, please.
Thank you, Annie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Marike, for the informative presentation. I'm just interested in knowing how was the cutoff points reached? I saw in your example, for example, you had a range of 27 being the lowest, and then it was 107. How do you get the cutoff points? I think that's my question. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Busi. So I am going to ask Megan, would you like to respond to that? And then I see a series of hands up. So next I'll come to Anna.
Sure, and I'll keep my answer, I think, brief because we have 10 minutes and I see a lot of hands. But Busi, that's a really great question related to the actual design of the metric and the evidence base that helped to inform it. So of course, there was a lot of work done and literature reviewed, and we also developed this metric working from a metric, an earlier metric that Harvard had designed called the PDQS. So there's some similarities there. We also had secondary data sets that were used in our validation, which helped us to ground truth the cutoffs and allowed us to look at the distribution of consumption across different data sets to make sure there was a reasonably even spread, which is partly what you need if you're going to be having kind of a robust metric for use. So there were a lot of factors that went into developing the cutoffs, and it's all documented in some peer review papers. I can refer you all to the Journal of Nutrition supplement, which includes 11 articles that details our work to develop and validate the GDQS metric. I think the date is October 2021. It's free for download, open access. So you can take a look there at the different articles for more details. Thanks.
Great, thanks for that response, Megan. And we can share the link in the chat also for that series of articles. Next, I'm gonna take the question from Anna. It looks like you had your hand up next. Good to see you here.
Yes, hi, Wendy. Just a note, I think the chat is disabled and that's why everyone's raising their hand.
Okay.
But I can ask my question live. I was wondering, how are mixed dishes treated within the app, both in terms of listing the food and then in terms of quantity? So for example, if there's a sauce with 5 different ingredients from different food groups, how is that?
Great, good question. So I think some of this will become clearer once we do the demo itself in the app, but maybe Morad, do you want to give like a couple sentence response to this?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Shall I answer it?
Sure, Marike, you can.
Yeah, sure. It was a good question, and one that's always tricky in dietary assessment is how the mixed dishes are dealt with. And as Woody said, we will demonstrate that when we use the app. But basically, there's a step in which we ask ingredients of mixed dishes. We don't ask for any details on these ingredients. We just ask what the ingredients are. We don't ask quantities or details. And we've asked them to focus on the main ingredients. So whatever they can tell, basically. But you will see that during the demo.
Yeah, and I think also, Anna, to keep in mind, if, and for the rest of the group, if things aren't clear coming out of the demo related to this question, we're happy to discuss in the longer Q&A session after the demo. It looks like Nabil, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yeah, thank you. My question first, I have 2 questions. First, what's the main difference between the household dietary diversity score and the diet quality score? Second, the diet quality score, can we, at the country level, can we capture it at regional levels, or is it captured only at the national level? Like provincial level, you carry out a study of maybe 1,000 households in a particular province, or it's done, or it becomes good for policy recommendation only at the national level?
Excellent. 2 questions there. Megan, do you want to respond to that, or?
Sure, great. Yeah, thank you for those questions. So the first question is, if I understood right, what is the difference between this metric and, for example, the household dietary diversity score? So the household dietary diversity score is a metric that is really more reflective of access. It's used oftentimes as a metric of food insecurity at the household level. This metric is more at the individual level. So it's asking about foods that were consumed by an individual. And so it's meant to reflect diet quality among the foods that were consumed by that individual. In terms of how the data can be collected or at what geographic level, it's totally up to the user. It can be incorporated into any type of existing survey. And certainly, I'm a huge advocate for being able to have disaggregated data, because that's gonna, in terms of geography and subpopulations, because that's gonna tell you more specific information about what's happening in different places rather than an overall aggregate, which can sometimes mask important differences that are happening across regions or across provinces or across subpopulations. So certainly the GDQS could be integrated into a survey that was being carried out at the provincial level, for example, to make some provincial specific decisions, or to get evidence to inform actions that would be appropriate in that setting. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. So we have about 2 more minutes left. So Ramani, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. I'm not sure if my internet is good enough, but just 2 quick questions. Salty foods don't seem to be considered in the unhealthy food groups. So I'm wondering, things like salty snacks, are they accounted for? Of course, processed foods would have salt, the processed meat, but just other foods with salt. And my other question is, I would think not all these unhealthy food groups are equally unhealthy. So for example, white roots and tubers, in my opinion, according to the data, would be probably less unhealthy than processed meat or sweets and ice cream. But it seems like they would all get the same score nevertheless, because it's a very small score range that's allowed. Yeah, thanks.
Sure, yeah. So for the salty snack foods, I think the way that we capture it is, as you probably saw, there really isn't kind of an ultra processed food category. What we do have is a purchased deep fried food category, which is scored negatively. And then we also have the processed meat category. And then, as you noted, there's the sweets and ice cream. And I think in terms of the performance of the metric, you're correct. We were trying to find kind of a sweet spot, right, with having a simplified scoring for the GDQS, so as not to overcomplicate things, because of top priority, as Marike said, was really to make this simple, easy to collect, something that could be integrated into routine surveys to kind of mainstream dietary data collection and reporting of diet quality. And so we tried, for that reason, not to really overcomplicate things too much, but I agree in principle that probably, you know, sweets and ice creams and some of the other unhealthy food groups might have a different level of unhealthiness than other food groups that are kind of in that category. We don't make all of those kind of fine distinctions. Sometimes it comes out a little bit if you look at the cutoffs in terms of the low, middle, and high, and where the point values are assigned. But I guess the real kind of ground truth that we did was when we did our secondary data set validation across low, middle, and high income countries, we saw consistent and strong associations with our outcomes that were of interest, which was the nutrient adequacy related outcomes and the NCD risk related outcomes. And again, that's all documented in that Journal of Nutrition supplement, and I think Murad sent that link. So not a perfect answer to your question, a great question, but I hope it helps give you a little bit more information and insight into what some of our thinking was around the scoring and the work that we've done to help validate it.
Great, thank you. So due to the time, we're going to now move ahead to the breakout rooms for the GDQS demo. I see that Oluntunji and Gloria, that you both have your hands up. So if you can just hold on to your questions if you would like, and then bring them to the table when we come back after the GDQS demo, that would be great. Also, for those of you who, as Joanne stated at the beginning, for those of you who are interested in joining a room either in Spanish or French, if you haven't already communicated that to Julia Madison, whose name you should see as a host, please do so now. And if you end up in an English speaking room and you don't want to be in there, please let the intake staff know, and we can redirect you to an appropriate Spanish or French room. Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. We'll give it 1 more minute to make sure that everybody's back online, and then we'll proceed ahead with the feedback from the demo sessions. Okay, so I will start at well, on my end, it's going to be 9:25 sharp. So there we go. Okay, so I hope everybody's back. I hope everybody had like a good demonstration session. And so what I wanted to do, so I do have some questions that I received from Winnie from the earlier session. We'll try to get to those. I have also some questions that came from my own session, but however, what I'll do is that I'll first call on Winnie to basically give us, some of the feedback and the question from her own breakout room. So Winnie, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Murad, and hello, everyone. So the questions that I received, I think I'll just, if it's okay, I'll just kind of read through them / summarize quickly, and then we can note which ones came up for other people as well. So one of the questions was, I think, an important one about how respondents are kind of estimating the foods to fit into the cube when they're assessing the size. So like a piece of bread or tortilla chips, which were examples in my demo, are those items scrunched into the cube mentally? Are the chips broken up and crushed in or kind of piled into the cube? So something to respond to is that there were a couple questions about whether the translations, if it's possible to add translations for new languages for the food list and the instructions, and then also the possibility of adding new foods to the food database. And I'll just say quickly, the answer to both of those is yes, but we can discuss in more detail the process. Then there was a question about whether tags can be modified and what the process would be for that to make the tags like more context relevant. So beyond white bread and brown bread, what about other types of bread, for example? There was a question about the mixed dishes and if the respondent is reporting on the amount consumed, but it can be difficult to visualize what goes into their bowl versus the whole pot, particularly for a homogeneous mixed dish. And so how we would instruct people to disaggregate that information. And then what about if the person consumed more or less than the maximum or minimum cube? Could they enter like 0.5 of the smallest size cube or 1.5 of the largest size cube, for example? So thank you. And thanks to my group for great questions.
Great. So what I'll do here is that I'll try to answer some of those questions, Winnie, and then I'll pass over to Megan on some of those questions. But please, Megan, don't hesitate to complete, the answer, or if you want to add anything, just please go right ahead, okay? So I'm going to start first with the question about how the respondent estimated the quantity relative to the cube, you know, like are they like scrunching things and all of this. And so that is a very good question. Thank you very much for that question. And so there is no like one answer that fits all foods and all respondents and all contexts, that like a one answer that basically corresponds to how the process works. And I want to remind people of a very important principle here for the GDQS, the GDQS metric in general and the GDQS more specifically. As Marieke presented earlier in the session, in the lab, what you saw is that we're trying to, the idea here is that we're trying to get people to be classified either in the low, middle, or high, and in one case, which is the high-fat dairy, very high consumption categories for the food group as a whole, right? So that's our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal here is not for any single food item or even for any food group to have an exact, you know, like gram estimate of exactly what people ate. That's not the idea. The idea here is to get like an order of magnitude in general for either if you have like one food item in the food group, so that would be one food item, or, you know, foods grouped together, which is an order of magnitude, and then basically place that general order of magnitude in the low, middle, or high categories based on the GDQS metric. So that's what we're trying to do. So in some cases, for instance, you know, let's say, you know, the metric has this, you know, it doesn't change in terms of the points assigned from cube 1 to cube 4. And then it's cube 5, 6, 7, for instance, that are in the middle consumption category, and then 8 to 10 in the high. So even if you end up selecting a cube that, you know, that the person has made a bit of an error in the estimation of the quantity, it's not, you know, it's not that big of a deal in terms of the general classification that we're trying to get. And of course, there will always be errors, and this is the limitation, you know, of these metrics, where something has to give, right? You're trying to go and make something that works well, that doesn't take a lot of time. So something has to give, but at the same time, what we're going for is like a general estimate of the consumption, like at least have some information about quantities that we have seen through the validation work that we did with the secondary 24-hour data sets, actually augments and improves the performance of the metric relative to having no information on quantities at all. So that's what we're trying to do. And I hope that this, so what are the respondents doing exactly mentally? You know, like, are they like, like crushing, how are they visualizing things? This is a bit of a black box for us. To be honest, we don't know exactly what was going on, but, you know, to each, and it depends by, you know, food types. You know, the liquid foods are easier, some are harder. But so again, but what we're going for here is like a general estimation. Megan, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it. That was great. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Then there was the question about translation in new languages. That's absolutely possible, of course. So we already have the app translated in a few languages. You saw in this session that we had the English, the French, and the Spanish versions. We also working with partners where we have not only the interface of the application, but also the food database that goes with it translated into Thai. And we're looking forward to working with people to get, you know, more translations done over time. So I think, I guess from the demonstration session, you saw that, you know, I don't know if you had the opportunity to go through that scenario, but basically any food that does not exist in the database can be immediately added to the open recall and immediately added to the app as you go. So that also a question that came up in my session, a question from my dear friend Stefan. He asked, you know, like in Africa, in his country, there's a lot of, you know, like foods that have, you know, like local names or not necessarily appear in the database in the way that they should. So what do I do about those? You know, how do I make sure that my respondents are not stuck trying to select something that does not exist in the database? So I hope that you've seen that, you know, in the app, that you can add that food as you go on the fly during the interview, no problem at all. And it's a very quick process, and it works for both individual food items. Let's say, for instance, if for any reason, if let's say a type of apple is missing, you can add it. So it works for individual food items, but it also works for mixed dishes. Any mixed dish, whatever its name, can be added, and then the app will still go through the step of asking about the ingredients of that mixed dish, whatever it is. And so this is, and so this implies one thing. So that process implies one more thing that you have to think about when you are organizing the survey, which is you have to think about then how is the enumerator going to classify that food item. Okay, so that requires a little bit of thinking, a little bit of preparation to think about these, especially if you have like a lot of wild foods or something like that. So just so that they can classify it into something. As you may have seen from the app, step 7, when people are using the cubes, requires that everything be classified somewhere. You can't go with a don't know question or don't know answer about like a given food item or an ingredient of a mixed dish. Everything has to be classified so that by the time you reach step 7, you're able to estimate quantities adequately. And this means that if you're expecting, so this means 2 things. It means that if you think that the database is missing a lot of foods that are present in the country and it's not there, it means that you have to do a minimum amount of work to add those foods in the Excel file that then gets built into the application. And that's a very easy process. We made that very easy so that you can add as many food items as you like that are not represented. And so that's one possibility. And then the other possibility is that you deal with these things as they come up during the training, during data collection. And for instance, you basically tell everybody when that food appears, you train everybody to basically classify it in the same way. So you have a couple of approaches there. Let me, I think that Winnie, you answered the question about modifying the tags. Yes, you can absolutely modify those. A lot of the things that you see in the database, either the names of the foods or the tags that are associated with them, all of these things exist in an Excel file, which you can easily modify to fit the needs of your country, okay? I know that, so there were a couple of more questions about mixed dishes and cubes. I'll just basically leave those to the side for the moment and move on to Joanne to see if any questions, like came up in the session that has not been raised so far.
Just to follow up on one thing that you just discussed, a question that came up, and yeah, just to make sure I give the right answer. So if a new food comes up, so you enter a new food, is that accessible now in the database to everyone, to other interviewers? And I thought not immediately. Mm-hmm. It's accessible in that individual interview, yes, but an extra step would be needed to add that food to the database so that other interviewers could access it.
Yes.
Okay.
So if something comes up and it's not in the database, okay. So the first answer that I'll tell you, it's that no, it's not available to other enumerators. And it's not even available to the same enumerator when they move on to the next interview, which means if they move on to the next interview and the same food comes up again, they will have to basically classify it manually again. To avoid this happening, not only for the same enumerator, but for other enumerators, is that you update the Excel file that contains, the database, and then you basically distribute that to everybody on their tablets, and they can update the application. So now it incorporates then that new food on the fly, and we made that process very easy to do. So that's the answer to your question. Any other questions, Noran?
There were mostly questions about the cube, but just to mention, like one person asked, like, how do I know what the measurements of the cubes are? And I kind of explained that you don't need to actually worry about that. It's all automatic. And we would actually, we work with us for your survey, we would provide you the cubes, and, you don't have to reproduce them or worry about the size. It's all automatically, the sizes are, already the app will calculate according to the cube sizes. But
yes.
Yeah, so that was something, just a logistical of getting the cubes to people who are interested in using the app. And then, yeah, just the general questions about cubes, how do you, why a cube and not some other type of, plates or something. So yeah, if you want to touch on that, and just, the general, how do I know, a woman in Ghana can estimate, correctly the difference between cube 2 and cube 3. And I think you explained that a little more clearer and better than me in terms of, the general, what we're generally interested in, not getting a very specific amount of a particular food, but it's categorizing into those broad groups. So that was it.
Okay. So why, I'll very quickly answer the question about why did we work with cubes before passing things to Megan. So why the cubes? So the idea of the cubes came to us from basically, our previous experience with 24-hour recalls, where sometimes, cubes were used to estimate, the amounts for some foods. And then we thought, well, since we're using cubes, also the other advantage is that if you make them hollow, which they are, so I have a cube here, and as you can see, it's a hollow cube on the inside. So the advantage from a logistic point of view is that you can stack them all together inside one another, and we've made it such that they can basically be stacked, in one another, so that the only thing that you're carrying, in terms of 10 cubes, is just this. It's just one cube, like this size 10 cube. That's the only thing that you're carrying with you on the field. It saves space. And also the other thing is that these cubes, they are 3D printed, produced, to be 3D printed. And so the cube shape is one of the easiest one to do and to get right. And so this is also, from a logistic point of view, something that attracted us to the cube size. So this is one of the main reasons. But that doesn't mean that we are completely closed off to improvements or other ideas. So now I'll pass the baton on to Megan with questions that came up during her session, and then I have a couple of questions for you, Megan, to answer from the sessions.
Okay, great. And Murad, please keep an eye on time.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that, and I know that we might be running short. Yeah. So we got through several questions in my group, but there were a few we didn't get to. So I think that's what I'm going to focus on here. And maybe just in the interest of time, I'll try to answer them myself, and then I'll pass it back to you. I also saw a hand up. I don't know if it was an old hand, but I thought I saw a hand from Neville, I think it was. If you also want to take the opportunity to call a hand later. But first was, I can't find the app on the, when I look for it. And so I just want to tell everyone the app currently isn't available on the Play Store, the Google Play Store. You need to write to us. Joanna will later have a slide that gives our contact information. And if you want a demo version of the app, write to us and let us know. We'll be happy to send that to you so that you can get experience playing with the app yourself. And if you decide you want to use it for a survey, also let us know and we'll work with you and provide, we are able right now to provide no cost technical support. There was also a question about, does the Gdqs data that are collected with the app get sent to a server? And yes, it does get sent to a server. This avoids the need for data entry. And as Marieke highlighted, also data tabulation is done automatically. Again, in the idea that we really wanted something that was simple, easy to use, streamlined, could be integrated into routine surveys, whether they were carried out at small scale or large scale. So yes, it gets sent to a server. Right now, it's designed to go to a CS web server. This is based on CS Pro. kind of technology, which has been developed by the US Census, and is really, it's free. It requires some configuration of your server, but that's probably something that we can help lead you through as well. But the idea is that we didn't want people to have to incur, specific costs related to, I don't know, purchasing a specific server provider or anything like that. Let's see, there's some questions again about the cubes. One is what type of validation has been done with the cubes? And right now we have a study underway in Thailand. It's actually a study that's being done by Harvard in collaboration with Mahidol University in Thailand, where they're doing a validation of the GDQS app. They're almost done with data collection. Obviously, the results of that will be forthcoming. We also have some validation work that is planned. Hopefully, we're going to undertake that late in 2022. So we'll have more information on that forthcoming. But again, I think the point to highlight here is we're not trying to get to nutrient intake data. We're trying to get robust information on what people eat and an estimate of the food group amounts that they eat in terms of categories, low, medium, or high. So that was a compromise that we decided to make in the aim of simplicity and getting dietary data collected in a mainstream way, but at the same time, adding a little bit more detail than is currently collected by a lot of metrics that are currently in use, so that more detailed information could be available to guide informed actions.
Megan, may I follow up with just one quick question on this, on the validation? So there's a question here that it has been validated for women of reproductive age. Can it also be used for men, older women, and will we expand it for use in children?
Okay, great question. So we did the secondary data validation as reflected in that journal supplement for focusing primarily on non-pregnant, non-lactating women of 15 to 49 years. There are less data sets available for men, but we do have data also reported for men in that supplement for a China data set and for an Ethiopia data set. So there has been some validation work done for men. In Thailand, they are collecting data for men as well as women, and they are collecting data outside of the 15 to 49-year-old age range. So, just to say, we don't expect that we would create a different GDQS for men or for older age groups. Younger age groups, I'm gonna put a peg in that, and we'll come to that, I think, a little bit later in the session, but it's a great question. There was also a question here about, has there been sufficient verification of the efficacy of the app for sufficient information gathering? So I think part of this is related to the time and cost involved. That's what I'm reading about efficacy, but also the level of detail that the app provides. Again, we're in early stages, but what we can say, I think pretty much without doubt, is that with the GDQS app, you are getting more data than kind of other simple tools by knowing the actual foods and the actual beverages that are consumed. And with the app, all of that raw data that is collected is retained so that there can be deeper analyses. And then the GDQS metric itself obviously has the benefit of being automatically tabulated.
We have 3 minutes left to answer the remaining questions. So if you have a couple of more important questions, and I want to give also Marike a chance to, if there were any questions from her session that we didn't address yet, to be able to submit that.
Great. I just want to follow up on one earlier point related to the cubes. As we said, they can be printed by a 3D printer. I think I just wanted to clarify, rather than us sending you the cubes, we really recommend that they be printed in country. There's a lot of logistical challenges with us sending them overseas and potentially getting stalled in customs, depending on the country that they're being sent to. But that is one of the benefits of the cubes, and that they can be printed with a 3D printer, is you really should be able to do it in just about any country, and it should be pretty low cost. This isn't a high cost item. So,
and this is also one of the reasons we went for the cube shape, because again, for the 3D printer, it's one of the easiest things to reproduce reliably. Marike, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Murad. Most of my questions have been answered. The only question that remains is, I had a great question asking if the respondent is allowed to select a cube size between 2 cubes. So, and the simple answer is no.
Yeah. So,
but if you want to add to that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So no, you can't record half a cube or something like that. So as you maybe you've seen this in the breakout rooms, in order for a cube to count, it really has to be that amount, the amount that corresponds to the side of the cube or bigger. If it's slightly less than that, then you go to the lower cube. And then the app behaves this way when you land on an exact cutoff. So there are no in between. And if there are like uncertainties about whether it's number 2 or number 3, then the question is, was it as big or bigger than number 3 or slightly smaller than number 3? If it's as big or bigger, 3 remains. If it was slightly smaller, it goes to the cube number 2. Okay, so I realize that I hope that we've addressed most of your question very quickly. I'll say here a question. If there is more one person per household, then how do we do? Well, you just create a new response in the same household, and then you move ahead. Exactly, what the same you would do with any like any new response you generate in the same household. And then there was a question about, yes, the last important question about what if the person is unable to basically take out, like the example was given was peach juice in a mixed dish, and they can't visualize, the amount of peach juice. So again, when I want to give you back to the, basically the guiding principles of when we developed this, we're not looking for an exact estimate to the gram of how much peach juice was added to the recipe. And again, we're also not asking for impossible tasks. When we asked about a mixed dish and people can't really, remember all of the ingredients of the mixed dish, they can at least remember what were the main ingredients, and that's good enough. And that's part of the compromise that we are working with to keep the metric simple and usable. So, okay, so with this, I hope we answered most of your questions, and I'll pass the baton on to Megan to provide, some information about the work in the future.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a few minutes to share with you all some work that we have in progress that, again, is part of our work to reduce barriers for data collection and help to mainstream dietary data collection across sectors. So next slide, please. Great, so a question came up. Thank you very much for that question. We are currently doing work right now to validate the Gdqs metric for children. We have 3 different age groups that we're currently looking at. We have 24 to 59 months, 5 years to 9 years, and 10 to 14 years. So what we're envisioning right now, we'll see how the validation work plays out, what our results are and what they look like. But what we're envisioning now is that there would potentially be 3 different metrics, 1 for each age group. The main adaptation that we are exploring and making is really around what are the right cutoffs in grams for each of the food groups in the Gdqs metric to take into account the fact that children typically consume less food than adults. So this work is underway. Hopefully we'll have something to share with you in 2023, but just know that this is in the works and coming. And once we have the metric validated for each of those age groups, we also intend to adapt the app so an app will be available to easily use to collect data on children using the Gdqs app. Next slide, please. Okay, this is another piece of work, a separate piece of work that we are working on. Recognizing that human health is very much related to environmental health, and what we consume is related to our food environment, of course, and food production and how food is produced. All of this plays a role in environmental health. And And so we decided that we really wanted to put forward some efforts to further augment the app that we have to develop what we're right now calling a climate sensitive diet app. This app is going to be different than the GDQS app in that it will take a little bit more time to collect data, but you'll get more data out of it. So it's just going to be an option for people if they want to use this app instead of the GDQS app. This app will collect data on the amount of food and beverages consumed at the individual food item level, so not at the food group level. Apart from that, the app is very similar to the GDQS app. But with the app, we are again having metrics that are automatically tabulated. We have the GDQS that will be able to be automatically tabulated, but in addition, we're developing the app to be able to report on the following population level diet metrics: the land use associated with the diet consumed, freshwater use associated with the diet consumed, freshwater and marine eutrophication potential, greenhouse gas emissions. Using those 4 different metrics, we have a metric that comes up with the total environmental impact of the diet. And then we're using that data to also identify a threshold for what is it to consume an environmentally sustainable diet. And so that the percent consuming an environmentally sustainable diet can be tabulated automatically by the app, as well as those consuming an environmentally sustainable and healthy diet, linking back to the GDQS framework for what is a healthy diet. So this is all in the works. We have an early beta version of the app that's ready. We're still working on some further developments and refinements, but this is something that we hope to have kind of a demo version that we'll be able to share with you by the end of this calendar year. So we're really excited about that and hopefully making a contribution to new tools to help assess, monitor, track, and evaluate our progress towards taking actions with our diet to address the climate crisis. And I think that's it. I think I'm passing it back now to you, Joanne. Thank you.
Right, so as we promised, here is the contact information for if you're interested in using the GDQS or have more questions. You can write us an email at that email address, gdqs@fhisolutions.org. You can go to our website. There's more information on the GDQS app as well as what we do at Intake. And here are our social media contact information. And thank you very much for joining and participating actively and for all your great questions and enthusiasm for our app. So we hope to work with you in the future to use the app for your surveys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And we're going to wrap up this session now, but just a big thank you to the Intake team and our facilitators and for everyone for your great questions and participation. So please visit our website at ANH Academy if you're interested in any of the other learning labs or the research conference sessions going on next week. And finally, we will upload the recording of this session in the coming weeks as well. If there are folks that join late and want to revisit the session. So thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.